Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Community Roundtable Podcast. This is podcast number 697. My name is Eric Nielsen. With me today, I don't have a co-host. Today is Friday, July 19th, 2024. We're doing it on a special day because we have Yves Sandfort in the house today, and we're going to be talking to him about, what it takes to go from vSphere to VCF, a customer perspective, what's happening in Europe. And Yves is from the Com Division, CEO, great community guy all along. So we'll get to him in a second, and we'll talk about, the change that's happening around vSphere, VCF, and Broadcom and partner ecosystem in Europe. So we should have a good podcast learning Yves' perspective of what's actually happening. I think we had Yves on maybe 6 or 7 months ago where he gave us his perspective of the acquisition. So it's great to have him back in Palo Alto. He's been here for the last week talking to various leadership in the company. So we'll get his perspective. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about what's happening. So first off, Explorer is ramping up, of course. Schedule Builder is now open. People have been scheduling. We're watching sessions that are filling up, and as they do, they'll be opening additional sessions, so that's good. We're also seeing a spike in registration, so I can confidently say that it's going to be very similar to last year in the number of people that are going to be there. It should be a great show. We're seeing registration peak up and spike now as we get closer, and we're not even into the big ramp up time yet. So I'm expecting, a large number. I think their target was, 7,500 to 10,000. So my guess is that we're going to hit somewhere in that neighborhood. And so don't hold me to that, but Reg is looking good and should be a great show. The Code Labs went live. So we've got 2 Code Labs that are going to be happening at the community booth. The community booth is as big as ever, if not a little bit bigger this year. 2 podcasts, two blogger tables, both in the code section and in the community session. VMUG has a booth in the community section this year, so that's new. And we've got Brad Tompkins going to be doing sessions. We've got some VMUG people doing sessions. We're going to be recording the sessions and putting them all up on YouTube, both for the community theater as well as the code theater. So expect to see those. If you can't make the show, expect to see those online on the YouTube channel. So that's all happening. Vanguard is going to be there, so we're excited about that. And Corey Romero can't be with us today, but we will be announcing the vExpert apps. They're open, the second half vExpert apps of the year. So if you've been busy working and you get your app in, we are going to have a leadership event on Tuesday night. So a lot of those invites have gone out. We expect to see several hundred people there at the event. So we're excited about that. And we're going to have some nice announcement about that event, maybe in early August. We can't talk about it yet. We're still in an embargo, but that event should be a great event with some key people, as always, coming and getting to meet everybody that's influencing the community. So excited about that. And then at the same time, the hackathon's ramping up. That's going to be Monday night. It's going to be in the main section of the Venetian, where the conference center is, right on the main aisleway there. So, and we're going to have some drop-in tasks. So we're excited about that. We've got HOL full stack VCF environments set up so that if you want to drop by and learn how just to do some scripting, we're going to have some activities for you, even if you're not on a hackathon team. So that's actually happening as well. So if you got nothing to do and you want to geek out with us Monday night, you can come by the hackathon. We'll have things that you can do with a full stack, and we're going to run some tutorials so that you can learn a little bit, even if you don't even write any code. You can come by and say hello to everybody and have something to do for the evening. We'll have food and beverage, and so it should be a fun geek out Monday night. If you want to not go drink yourself silly, you can come by us and hang out with us. We'll be, hacking on some code. So that's the hackathon Monday night. Tuesday night, fun vExpert leadership event. And then I think that then, the labs and all the sessions, everything looks good. So if you can get some tickets to Vegas, I know they're extending the Venetian discount for like $169 a night in the Venetian, which is, man, that's a great deal. If you've ever stayed in those rooms, you should get your significant other and bring them along and have a nice time in Vegas while the event's going on, because that hotel is just fun to stay in. It's a beautiful hotel, beautiful rooms, sunken living rooms, the whole thing. So that's $169 a night. They're extending that until I think August 1st. So you have another week or so to get go reg. And I know that for a fact because I canceled my whole reservations and went and re-registered my hotel yesterday. Got all the rooms that I needed. I needed to change where I was going to stay, but got it in the Venetian, $169 a night, and I think I'm there Friday through Thursday. So rooms are available till I think August 1st. So, if you change your mind, come hang out with us. I think you're going to learn a lot. I think we're going to talk to Yves about, I'm gonna talk a little bit about AI and what does it mean in the data center. There are things to learn about that, NVIDIA racks of stuff and how to manage them. I'm excited about that. And then the last thing I'll say before we get to Yves is Explore Europe is reg is open now, and we're doing the same thing in Europe, right? So we've got the code labs, we've got the 2 theaters, we've got the hackathon scheduled, we've got the party scheduled, the leadership party. So nothing is changing for Europe. So Europe, I think, is going to rival US this time. I think reg numbers are going to rival US. We've seen more momentum in Europe than we have in the US when it comes to coming to events. So I think Barcelona is a cheap place to go. It's easy to fly to. So we're all in, getting everything ready for Europe, and we're spending the same kind of money that we did every year. So excited to see everybody in Europe. Great labs. The labs learning how to use ChatGPT to write PowerShell. We have a 101, which is the same lab as last year, just teaching you a little bit about ChatGPT. And then the second lab we've done this year is actually getting code out of it, right? Getting PowerShell code, and we're going to have example codes, and you're going to be able to make it write code for you. So excited about that as well. And so everything's ramping up. I think that's it for the news. Let's get to our guests. So Yves Sandfort, you're a man of the community. I know you do live streaming. You're a CEO at the same time. We always start on the community podcast. Tell us, a few minutes in case people are new listening to this. Who are you? How long have you been in the ecosystem? What does ComDivision do? And then we'll get into kind of what you're experiencing over the last 6 months.
Yeah, so my name is Yves Sandfort, not Stanford. If I would be related to the Stanford campus, then actually,
yeah, exactly.
My problems. I'm actually in the VMware ecosystem since Workstation 1.0. So I'm playing around with it for a long time. We started originally as a data center company, moved from SunSpark to x86, and then actually split up the company. The hosting business went to NSI, and I kept the professional services consulting and training and everything else business around the VMware stack, which we developed back then. We, up until the changes, because now MSCs and stuff like that don't count that much anymore. We were one of the, I think, below 10, 15 partners who had all 8 master services competencies. We have, including myself, 2 VCDXs on staff, and I think 8 instructors and stuff like that. So it's a great community. I think we have nearly half of our staff is vExperts as well. So we do a lot for the community. Also, if you see us on YouTube and everything else, there is a constant stream of videos and everything else, because we love to share the knowledge, but also as much as I'm doing a bit more on the, let's say, business news part around what happens for partners and everything else in the VMware ecosystem, and actually try to keep people a bit updated, especially also those in Europe, because the information funnel from the US to Europe to the partners is not necessarily always as fast as it is with us, as I'm actually, I think, every second month now here on campus for a few weeks. So, and that being said, I also want to quickly jump onto the VMware Explore bandwagon. So we are going to have a customer briefing center there in the Venetian, and we are going to compete with you with a hackathon and actually run a poker tournament on Monday evening. So if you don't don't want to do the hacking part and actually want to play poker, then reach out to me. We still have, I think, a few seats left. I think we are aiming for 50, 100 people in the tournament, and there are going to be a few fun prizes to be given out. And you don't need to play with your own money, so you can play 2 hours at the Venetian poker tables and don't have to actually spend your own money. That being said, I think the last 6 months for everybody, I think it was October, November when I was on the show last, when we discussed about everything which changed with Broadcom and my expectations and everything else. Except for a few things, a lot of things actually more or less came into play like I expected it to be. When we also look into VCF 5.2, that more or less played into the game for what I said back then, where I said it's like the first thing people are going to complain, there are not that many new features. Everything is now integration. A lot of these things happen as expected for me. And I think that's on the one hand side very... I think it's good for a lot of customers, but we will dig deeper into transition for customers from vSphere to VCF as we go along. But it's also interesting really to talk to the leadership teams and everybody else. I mean, I spent several meetings with Hock now, and he has a clear vision, and he has a clear plan he is working to. He knows that this is not necessarily always the plan everybody else is following, but it always, sometimes with the discussions we have at the moment, remind me more when we have them with customers of this picture with the square tires on the field, and people is like, no, we don't have time to actually change the tires to round ones. Is we just need to get our head around the times have changed and VMware is changing, and it's, from my perspective, for a lot of customers for good.
Yeah, so let me unpack a little bit. First off, Monday night at Explore, that sounds actually fun. Did you say 5,100, like 5,100, or
no, 50 to 100 is the plan.
Oh, 50 to 100 people. I'm like, how did that's like? It's like, oh my!
I'm not aiming to actually get half the audience or something like that.
Right. There's going to be that's a big. I didn't realize we had that many. I know we have a lot of beer drinkers, but I wasn't sure about poker players.
But that sounds.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yes. That sounds fun, and I like that. I like the idea that the hackathon goes on for the uber nerds that don't really like to do social things at night. They want to spend their time in tech, right? So I think that's great. I also like the idea that you don't have to go drinking. You can go gambling. You can go compete in a tournament. That's fun. Gaming is fun. I love gaming. Whether you're gambling or whether you're just competing in the game of, what is the game? Is it going to be blackjack or poker?
Texas Hold'em.
Texas Hold'em. Got it.
Play Texas Hold'em, and I think it makes it. We wanted to do something different than what usually is going on in the clubs and stuff like that. And we also said it's like, there are often enough with the table limits and everything now in Vegas. It's not everybody is necessarily keen on spending their money on actually playing 2 hours of poker or something like that, because that can immediately, especially in the Venetian or Cosmo or something like that, can be quite expensive. So that was the idea to actually.
Yeah, and I like the idea. The problem I have with poker in general is I love playing the game. I get nervous when it's my own money, right? Because I have 4 kids. I got money. I got responsibilities as an adult, and I get bad when I don't like to lose. I'm an aggressive marketing kind of guy, and I get lost in it, and it's bad for me because I'll end up losing real money, and it's like. So I stay away from those, just because, even though I love the game, I don't like to lose my own money, and I'm smart enough to just not do that. But I love the idea that you have something you can go have fun, play the game, and then you're not really losing your own money. Do you have like rewards at the end or prizes, things like that you're going to do?
Yes. So we are going to give away a few seats at some of the events we are going to run. So we run a few tech events in the US and in EMEA and architecture think tanks. And we also have, so that it's not only a business related piece, people will get, I thought I have it with me, but I don't. We have mobile espresso machines, which we are going to give away, which you might have seen in one of my videos lately, because hotel coffee doesn't get any better. And so that is basically a mobile USB-C driven Nespresso machine, which actually produces quite good coffee. And it's, especially for Vegas, quite interesting, because now that Vegas even charges you for coffee on your room in some hotels, it might be good to have something for you at hand to get your morning coffee.
That's fantastic. USB-C now, I think, gives you up to 80 watts, right? So I guess you could actually have, enough out of a USB-C charger to, make that happen, right?
It has a battery in it, so it basically, you can put cold water in it. You can charge it up.
Right.
It actually produces
Right.
up to, I think, 3 or 4 espressos. So it's a pretty neat thing. And I am having it now for half a year, and it's actually, it was a investment I didn't want to actually give away again.
Yeah, I could see that. That's really neat. I wondered how they managed the wattage, because I've looked at doing remote espresso machines where you bring a little, a battery pack or something like that. But the wattage to heat water, you'd be surprised, right? You'd be surprised. Like, you can get 20 amp draw for some amount of time, but having enough battery pack there just to handle that, that would make sense. You charge up a battery, and then boom, you get a couple espressos made, they just pull the battery back. That's neat. So that'll be great for people. So, if you're interested, how do they send you mail or sign up? Where do they go?
Just actually ping me on social media. I'm very easy to find. Just search for me, for Yves Sandfort, or for ComDivision Explorer. The final sign up page is not yet up, because we need to have the Venetian to complete one step before we can do that, because it needs to be played by the official rules and registered in Nevada. That's going on in the back end. I was told that that's completed today or latest on Monday, and then we have the sign up.
All right. So YVES and then Sandfort, SANFFORT, right? So yes. You can Google him. He's got LinkedIn, he's got Twitter, he's all over the place. So you'll find him. Reach out to him and go spend Monday. If you're not going to come to the hackathon, you want to have fun, go sign up for that. That sounds good. So yeah, it's getting back to now, Broadcom acquisition. It has been 6 months, and you did predict, and we've had some conversations a little bit about the fact that it does take a little bit of adjustment for people to get used to that. They just have a different way of doing business, right? And they are going to, they've announced VCF. I like the VCF strategy. I think there's nothing wrong with that. You can still buy vSphere if you want. They've got rid of perpetual license, and they've moved it to subscription now. So the rest of the industry's already been doing that. So it is not the VMware run by Pat Gelsinger and Diane Green and all the others. It is now, a mature technology company, and to some degree I feel like we've moved from maybe a marketing of VW, Volkswagen, right, to like marketing Porsches, right? Like there's a step up on the maturity of the product and the enterprise strategy of the product, right? And that there's still a lot going on, but it just seems to be at a different level, and then you have to decide if you want to participate in that. And a lot of customers they were ready for that, right? And so that gets back to my customers need to almost go on this journey. A lot of them already have. I think maybe we talk 30 or 40% of the customers are already on this journey and perfectly happy with this journey. But then there's, a third of the customers that are like, well, we weren't really ready for this journey yet. Like, we still like Volkswagens. We have minibuses and we have flowers in our hair, and we like to be happy hanging out at the beach surfing, right? I feel like there is this. But some of them, that's maybe the third that are never going to get there, those guys. But there are a third that are like, well, we're not really ready to do that, but we feel like we're being forced and we're going to do it, but we're not really happy that we have to do that. But we know that that's where we're going to get in 5 years. And then there's this other third that really just want to hang out at the beach, and then they're looking at open source, and they're looking at other things they're going to do because they're not really sure they want to be in this space on this journey with Broadcom. Is that accurate? Are you seeing that kind of thing? And then how is that adoption cycle happening for your customers?
So I think it's the three categories are perfectly fine, and I think is what we see out there in the media, and this is something which you see across all kinds of different scenarios, whether it's this scenario or we are today is CrowdStrike Day, I think. And even there, you see that people are actually not necessarily listening to everything what's happening. But so the point is, yes, some people are leaving the game. But the question is, in the end, is like, how many of the, let's say, even if it's 30% of the people who say they are going to leave, are actually really going to do that in the end? Because when you look at it, when Microsoft or other vendors in the past did major changes, it's like every time Microsoft pulled a product out of the perpetual model into subscription or even cloud only, it's like, oh, we are all going to drop off of Exchange because now they are forcing us into the cloud. We are all going to drop off of SQL Server. This is all the game which you see. And then in the end, the question is how many are really going to go? And I have my doubts that it's not even going to be 30%, because there is still offerings for the lowercase scenario. And in the end, let's face it, in the past, we had a license fee, and then you had to pay for SNS, support and subscriptions. And when you combine the cost of both of them over 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years, it actually is not so much different than what we currently have. The only point is that, yes, in the old model, if you didn't continue to pay, you could still actually use the software. That's changing. But as you correctly said, this has changed for nearly everybody else in the industry as well. And it perfectly makes sense, because it also leads to the point which when you watch the Broadcom story very closely, it's a lot of it is about being more efficient as a company. And being more efficient is not working if you actually support 15 versions back. This is something which Microsoft is trying to reduce. Every software vendor out there is also utilizing the vehicle of subscription to get customers to the point that they are always using the newest versions. Which then brings us to the point is like, what is the conversion looking like for customers? And one of the main reasons why customers in the past did not actually adopt all the technology and all the micro scenarios was because maintaining all of these products individually was horribly complex in many cases. I mean, we did a good living out of it as being primarily an architecture company. So for us, that was a good living in actually solving this complexity for the customers. But at the same point in time, it was also a lot was around is like the complexity of upgrades and updates and managing all of that. And I think this is exactly what we are seeing now with VCF. Once customers actually look into it, they feel it's like, oh, hang on a second. If I'm using VCF, I don't no longer need to worry about the complexity of all these upgrades. So that is going to help me. The other thing which we see out there is we just had this for an oil company in Europe, actually, which just signed with us. They were originally on the plan of actually utilizing the VVF, so the vSphere Foundation scenarios. And in the end, they now decided to go with VCF because once we actually packaged everything up, once we looked at all the different scenarios and also looked at 1 or 2 of the third-party tools they have been using in the past, it was actually for them in the end much more attractive to sign up for VCF and actually take the full stack, because then they also get SCDC Manager and all of these other advantages. The challenge, I think, for a lot of partners and customers out there is currently is understanding what VCF means, that it's not just like Office in the past in the Microsoft world where you still have 5 products and they are not integrated. It is actually bringing you not only all the products, but also the integration of the different products.
Yeah, it reminds me when Microsoft eventually got Office working, where they did integrate them all, and it wasn't just Word and Excel and these things. They actually eventually built up. Then you got there, right? And so maybe that's it. And I would say, as a marketer, I look at it, I go, what is there to market here, right? I kind of go like, there's no new, but reality, I think Hawk and you and others went out to talk to customers, and this is what the big customers were saying. Like, the cost to deploy your whole stack is impossible, right? Like, we just don't do it. We just do vSphere. Why? Because I don't have the energy and resources and training and to manage each of these products separately, which is what you almost need to do, right? A separate resource for vSAN, a separate resource for NSX. It wasn't integrated. You had to pretty much build a plan for deployment for each of those. So actually solving that might actually make, like you point out, VCF, one of these things where it's no longer like, oh, you're making me do all of this. Pretty soon you're like, well, wait, I just get this, and okay, it's a dollar amount, but if I can save money in these other places, then I actually do better, right? So you can see that start to happen. Our customer, yeah, so you've explained this to some. Is there like a journey for customers where the light bulb goes off at some point? Like how do you take them through that?
It is understanding their complete SDDC or their complete data center structure or software-defined data center structure in the first place, and the motion behind a lot of these things where customers actually say is like, yeah, but we have storage, we have this, and we have that. And for them to understand that we are just actually interchanging one or two components out of it and combining this with different hardware is making it sink in. The challenge which I typically also use a lot is, and this affects every vendor out there, is when you have security, not incidents by yourself, but a security advisory coming from a vendor where you need to urgently patch and manage and update your systems. I was just talking last week before I headed over to the US with a manufacturing customer out of Europe, but they have offices all around the globe. And their biggest challenge before VCF has always been is like the rising cost of managing and updating all of these infrastructures. And we were sitting in the meeting and we had covered all the VCF pieces, and all of a sudden one of the admins said, "Is like, yeah, this is all great, but we have these 34 vCenter servers running all around the globe, and VMware constantly sends us new updates. It's like, is there a way on how we can automate that?" And I was thinking, it's like, okay, so what did we talk the last half hour about? It's like,
right.
This is exactly why you are going, so then it makes sense that we actually pull the SDDC manager implementation and stuff like that in earlier, because then we have the advantages. Things like maintaining password updates and all of these things have been there with VCF already for a while. And once this sinks in with the customers, it makes a huge difference. The other thing is when it comes to storage and everything else, what I keep telling customers is take a very close look into where you are and what is your situation. Because what we have seen, and this is something which especially in the last couple of months has dramatically increased, is we have customers who have never talked to us actually ping us and say, it's like, can you look into our numbers? Because I keep saying on my videos, is like the new offerings in many cases are very competitive if you take a close look into everything from a hardware stack down to the software. Because some people only compare the software prices, and that's just not necessarily the correct way of doing it, because you need to take a look at the overall stack and everything else. And what we have seen is that also out there in the market, some people try to let's say, negatively influence the pricing, because in the past they made also a good living of not only selling VMware, but also a bunch of different hardware solutions, which to be fair, gave them better margins, so much to the point of the trusted advisor. And now that we take some of that away from a VMware perspective and say, it's like, hey, you're going to utilize vSAN because you have that now. And this is not necessarily in the first and foremost scenario. Plus, there is a bit more complexity when it comes to hardware choices now, because many of the salespeople are used to the fact that they could just actually sell out standard hardware, and then there was a standard storage box, and basically the storage vendor did all the sizing and calculations for them. Now that we have vSAN, it changes a bit, because you now need to actually put some more intelligence into it, which in the end is going to save the customer money, but in the first place,
more work for you. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. The fact that kind of like when we got into network and NSX, all of a sudden, you need to learn a lot about NSX networking in order to go to a customer and sell. So it was easy just to keep that separate, right? VCF definitely causes the partner ecosystem to have to, become experts in all three pieces of the architecture, right? And we make it easier, but it's like, oh, interesting. So a couple things unpack there. It sounds like you guys are moving into the U.S. now as well, right? Like it sounds like, with the Vegas thing, you're doing things in U.S. You have offices. Do you help customers in the U.S.? I've always seen you as Europe, so I'm not here to promote you or anything, but I just got to ask, like, so are you doing work with U.S. customers as well now?
This is actually nothing new. This is a phenomenon which we have been seeing for many years now. Is where like for I think the last 5 years we did already roughly around 50% of our revenue in the US. So people actually perceived us always as a European company, but we are actually dealing with US customers for many years. We are on US soil since I think 2012, so 12 years by now. So. But the point is,
yeah. Good
it
to
is
know
very
that.
select.
Like I'm in one of those camps that just always saw you as Europe because you would send us these European candy boxes and we just assume, oh, and you have so many European Netherlands V experts that I just always assumed that's where you did work. But that's interesting, right?
That's the point. Is like we are a global company, and this is something which I did a podcast a few weeks ago about that. We changed our strategy, I think, about a year ago or 2 years ago, where in the past we tried to have people everywhere where we have the projects and everything else. But as 90% of our projects are remote projects, yes, we have customer meetings. But even if I would have a resource in New York and he needs to go to LA for a customer project, it's more or less the same time as if he flies in from Paris. So it doesn't make that much of a difference. For us, it's this is where we said it's like we are basically, we cannot necessarily say we take people from everywhere, but we are working by now with a really global team because we said it's like we are aiming for having the best on the team, and therefore, if someone tells me he is perfectly fine and actually living in Turkey or in Dubai or in Latin America, it's like it doesn't matter for me as long as he can run the projects and everything else. And
right.
That also gave us great talent in the last couple of years because this makes the whole in enterprise. Also, it makes it more diverse. It's like my newest assistant, she comes from Bolivia, and so now all of a sudden I can actually attend Spanish customer meetings because I have someone who can translate that.
That's fantastic. All right, just to switch gears, I just want to understand that personally myself because I didn't know that. So that's cool. When we talk the fact that Broadcom bought it, we've had 6 months now to absorb I want to say backing away from cloud, right? So what's your perspective on customers dealing with the fact that I think we moved back away? Cloud services kind of just vanished. We went, we're not doing that anymore. We were running ARIA automation in the cloud. We had cloud services, and I think we've kind of backed away from that whole space. How is that? How is customers dealing with that? What's the mentality, or what's the sentiment around that shift? And do you think that that's going to stick?
So I think we need to be careful here. One of the things is what happened is all the SaaS services from VMware were actually at least massively pulled. I think Cloud Health is still there and a few others, but the SaaS services have been removed. And I think this actually might make sense because VMware also has a huge amount of cloud providers, including the hyperscalers out there. And some of them are far better off in actually hosting these services and providing them as a managed service. And it basically reminds me of many other things. It's like VMware is a software company. VMware provides software to run and operate a cloud. But the question is always, should you basically run the cloud yourself? And let's face it, these attempts to run these applications hosted or as a SaaS service were nothing new. VMware, I mean, there were several attempts for VMware to actually become part of the hosting business, and nearly all of them were revoked after a few years. And so this is nothing new. We still have the hyperscalers out there. The model has changed a bit. We still have, I'm not sure how many thousand service providers are going to stick. We have 500 Premier and Pinnacle service providers globally still running VMware stacks, plus all the white label ones. And they are going to host these applications moving forward. So I think overall we are, I wouldn't say.
So I guess, I should then correct the statement and say that Broadcom didn't really back away from the cloud. They just changed the model by which cloud products are being delivered, right?
That is one thing. The other thing is, and this has something to do with simplicity, and I'm pretty sure we will see changes in this in the next 1 or 2 years. Currently, it's all actually on simplifying the process and the products and everything else, which is what customers actually, what brings in this confusion where people say it's like Broadcom didn't understand the cloud stack by actually saying it's like you need to prepay everything for 1 or 3 years. This is has nothing to do with cloud. My personal feeling is this is a necessity at the moment to fix everything which is potentially not working as planned from a backend. Then once we are back there, I think we will have more flexibility in there. But it's a pretty normal scenario. And we are talking about the fact that VMware does not provide individual virtual machines. VMware provides software which runs on the hardware stack in the end. And the hardware stack is leased or bought anywhere. No one actually rents hardware just for a month. So, I mean, you can, but this is the task of the cloud providers. It's not the task of VMware. And I totally get Hock's argument in saying it's like, look, if we look at these service providers is, why should they, or why are they fine in actually spending the money on the hardware but not on the software? If we define VMware as the software-defined data center, which actually in its term has a lot of hardware in it, it's like, why can't we then actually run this the same way and basically bind this all together to the hardware and everything else? So I also wouldn't be surprised if in a short term we see much more integration with the hardware vendors, similar to what we had as VxRack and some of these other attempts in the past. But now with VCF, I think we have a new opportunity to actually see a completely new business model around these as well.
There are some, okay, that's a great answer. Thanks for explaining that. Makes a lot of sense. Next topic for me is edge computing, right? And, you know, we talked a little bit before the podcast. We spent a little time together, and we talked a little bit about edge and, you know, VCF and the edge, right? Like, you know, I see edge in my neighborhood. Palo Alto puts data centers on the telephone poles now, right? They got the little buzzing things sitting up on the telephone pole. And it's for the you know, the mobile service providers, right, that are offering services right on the edge. And I can see a vSphere in there, but I'm not sure about the whole stack. So when we're talking VCF out on the edge, is that something that's realistic? Like where do we see, you know, edge computing falling? I talk about it, but I don't know. I look at edge and I go, I thought that was sensors and little robotics and all that, and I'm not sure whether a whole stack is there. I guess you could still run vSphere without buying the whole VCF stack, and maybe that's just it. Maybe it's just vSphere subscription satisfies that. But I just wonder what your perspective is on edge, and then once we go through that, I'll ask you about AI. But what do you think of edge?
So first and foremost, with VCF 5.2, we now have the announcement. I mean, there are two edge solutions from VMware, so we need to always be careful. There is one for the telco market and one for the VCF market. But both of them actually make sense. And when we look at the edge, it makes sense with VCF because what we need to separate is a VCF basically has a management layer more or less on top, which is the management domain control plane, however we want to call it. And whether that control plane now manages a workload domain which has 25 hosts in it, or just 1 or 2 hosts and actually just manages the update process and just the vSphere in it, is a completely different ball game. And from that perspective, we should be more or less fine with that. And I think there is a huge market for this, and there is an opportunity for this to be managed like that, because then I have the same SDDC manager to manage all of my infrastructure, whether it's in the edge or whether it's in my data center. And that in the end comes down to how do we drive ROI down for the customers, and or how do we drive ROI up and TCO down for the customers, because in the end, this is what they are looking for. They want to operate more efficiently, and that's exactly what they are going to get to from that very specific scenario. And I think there is a good use case for edge. Does edge mean we are going to always see NSX and a bunch of other things on it? Most likely not, because it's just, but the hypervisor has a huge advantage. Taking your phone pole scenario, if in 3 years' time you need to replace the hardware, you potentially do not need to replace the software. So it's much easier if there is a hypervisor running on top of it. So yes, there is absolutely a use case for that for VCF. It's just people need to figure out, and it leads into the AI discussion as well, because when we talk about AI in the long run, AI has a lot to do also with data, which I need to get somewhere. It's like all these large language model discussions are based on the fact someone just scans the internet or your corporate network. But in the end, as we want to have AI learn things, we might need to have it in the storefront, in the production line, everywhere. And this in the end means we have some type of data collection and maybe potentially first analysis for AI at the edge. And so that is basically where, from my perspective, edge is one of the steps we need to be more towards a sovereign AI solution, which Broadcom is leading towards.
Yeah, it also then, as you were telling me, it also distributes some of that compute workload out into the edge, where if you have everything in a huge monolithic engine back in your data center, it means that you have to have a lot of compute capacity or GPU capacity to deal with the learning, where if you can distribute that learning out into places where the data is being collected, you just limit the amount of workload that has to be done in a centralized place to build your models, right? So little of a more of a distributed approach there.
And I think it's when we look at all of this, it's in the end it is a bit of a continued discussion of the IoT discussion, which we had in the past, where we had all these different sensors and we were all playing on how to collect all the data. And actually, back then we called it data warehouses, data lakes, and everything else. To a certain degree, some of what we currently do with AI is just actually rebranding technology, which we had already for a while. Not everything which has an AI stamp on it is not necessarily always AI, but it's basically every investor in Gartner tells you at the moment your application or your solution is nothing worth if you are not actually having AI integrated into it. So this is also where I always tell people is like, you need to be very, very careful with what you are currently looking at. If someone calls it out AI, whether it really has any kind of intelligence or is basically just the same old product, just with a new sticker on top of it.
Right. All right. That makes sense. I want to come back to something that popped into my head. Like, so your Monday Night Vegas event, and I know this is like whiplash here, but I want to come back to that and go like, will there be a way, if you have 50 to 100 people, are you going to be able to socialize and meet and engage with people while you're playing? Because I find it's interesting that you have, some really good, experience, and people that are going to be coming there are going to have a lot of experience. It'd be great if there was some kind of way to socialize as well, just to get to know some of the people that are going to be there.
I mean, you will get to socialize because you are sitting at tables typically of 8 people. So I'm not sure if there will be someone from my team on every table. But as the evening evolves, as people are betting, and actually the number of tables then shrink to potentially, let's say, 3-4 tables or 2 paid tables or whatever is going to be
I see.
the ones playing at the end. So you will be mixed again and again. So it is like if you have never actually really watched a poker tournament, it's like, this is not going to go for 2 hours. You are sitting not at the same table. It's like there will be tables eliminated because the people are trying to push, because it's in the end, this is not. And this is the fun part of such a tournament, because, as you said, it's like you don't want to play with your own money. It actually gives you the chance to do something you would never actually do for yourself. And actually, at one point in time where you are sure enough that your cards are good, you can just go all in without actually having the fear of
all in, right?
And that will actually reduce it. When I look at the rule set and everything we got from the Venetian, my guess is that roughly for the last half hour, we will only have a very small amount of tables left, because all the other ones have basically decreased, because the bets are going higher and higher. Every round, the bets are going higher. So you cannot play it safe and just saying it's like, oh, I'm going to play one chip because I want to stick around here for 2 hours. They are going to make sure that there is enough.
You have to compete. Yeah,
it is a competition game. But
right.
It is at least not a high roller competition game where you go home and actually just lost 5K or 10K in it, because that is not as much fun as it sounds.
So I know that we have a hard stop in a few more minutes here, right? We got you for 45 minutes today. So I do want to talk a little bit more about AI and, the hardware that NVIDIA is doing. And, there's seems to be 2 strategies. There's just the chip version of AI, right, where Broadcom makes chips that are specific Then you got like your GPU, which is very general graphics processor, which really wasn't built for AI, but people use it for AI. And then you can go buy massive rack machines from NVIDIA. And I feel like that's like a $10 million investment to go build out a full, AI capable engine. Maybe not. Obviously, you can do it for smaller amounts, but there's two competing strategies there. Do you see enterprises choosing one or the other? Are they still getting their feet wet in what they're trying to do with that? I know, we have chip strategy and we have GPU strategy. What's your thoughts on that?
I think in the end, currently what I see out there is much more demand for the GPU-based approach because it seems to be more feasible for most customers, and it is technology which they know and they think they can handle it. And there is always the motion, potentially, I can also use it for different use cases. Whereas the chip-based AI approach, in the end, potentially creates you more tokens or something like that within a certain time frame. But it is highly specific. I also met with Intel just yesterday, and there is so much complexity when you really dig into the deep details between the different approaches that I think the GPU approach for a lot of customers is just easier to understand. And I think that is why they are going for it. And all of these at the moment have a massive problem, is availability. Is no matter which one you are going to go for, each one of them actually is depending on the fact that you are going to get the components you want to have. This is not something like, hey, I'm walking out there and I'm getting, actually, it's like I'm turning up at NVIDIA and say, hey, I'm going to spend 5 million and could you actually deliver me the following list of GPUs? They will just have a huge laugh at you and actually say, it's like, yeah, you can actually place yourself at the end of the line again because this is not making any difference. And this is nothing different when you talk to other chip vendors, because this is a huge spike at the moment in demand. And so this is also something which I tell customers is like, figure out for yourself, if you're really going to get into the game of running all of this yourself. I mean, you do not necessarily need to go to the big hyperscalers. Out of the VMware, a few thousand providers is also a bunch who are going to offer AI as a service for you, and then you have it locally, potentially even around the corner in a local data center, and data stays with you, or you can actually control it. So there are multiple options on how to consume it. This is where I say is like, you need to be very, very careful if you really need this, because you need the GPUs and everything else for the number crunching game. But not everybody who utilizes AI is always doing number crunching.
Perfect. All right. Good to know. Good thoughts. I know we're up on top of the hour, and so, we're at the bottom of the hour, which means that you're going to lose your room at some point.
I think I might be lucky for a few minutes, because it seems like someone removed his calendar entry, which is the first time in this building that I see that people actually remove their calendar entry if they are not using the room.
Maybe it's a Friday. We say that the Thursday is the new Friday because the traffic in the Bay Area now is really busy on Thursday, but Friday it's pretty light, right? So I think everybody's doing the work in the office 3 days a week. I mean, Broadcom, we're in every day, but other people 3 days a week, and then maybe Mondays and Fridays are no longer the big thing. So maybe you get a little bit of break, so we get you for a little bit longer. Trying to think, you're gonna obviously be at Explorer, going to be running that. Do you guys have any sessions? Are your people RV experts? Did you get any sessions on the calendar? Or I know sessions are hard to get these days, so you're shaking your head no.
Sessions are hard to get. We didn't get any sessions. We did a lot of community sessions the last few years, but that has changed this year a bit as well. Plus, we need to be sure that we have everybody on stage or on call for whatever actually else we are going to do. Right. Plus, there are, from what I heard from the team just this morning on a briefing call, is we have some last-minute changes where some people just can't make it due to some family issues. That seems to be the norm. Last year, it hit me. I couldn't come due to a family scenario, and now we have one or two colleagues. no, we are not going to run sessions. We are going to do some things in our briefing center. So we are going to potentially do something there, but that is more on a customer by customer base. But if you are interested to actually exchange your ideas or anything else, if anyone wants to reach out, again, I'm going to, if you look on social media the next couple of days, there will be a bunch of links going out where you can set up meetings and all these kinds of things and tell us what you want to know and what you want to do. And we are perfectly fine to just hang out with people from the community. It's not going to be immediately a sales pitch, and we are not going to run after you for the next 6 months and actually call you every day.
And I can say that true for truth. You guys are, great community members. You're great participants. You share a lot of what you do, and you're not looking for anything other than just to be part of the ecosystem. And you have a lot of knowledge, so therefore you can help. And for me, that's what community is about. It is about sharing our knowledge. It's all about sharing. It's back in the days, I set up BBSs. That's how I got into community. I had BBSs, and you upload one and download 10, right? And that was the model, and that's the way it should be. And once in a while, there's some business that comes from it, right? Because people get to know people, and there's advantages of knowing people and trusting people that you shared stuff with. And so it's the perfect model for that. Yeah. I think I'm trying to think if there's any other topics that we need to touch base with. Do you have any topics that are top of mind from the Broadcom acquisition days, or any kind of advice you can give everybody that's still wading through this whole space?
I think the most important advice is at the moment is, especially when it comes down to how you are going to license and subscribe and everything else. Just be open-minded and potentially look around out there, and maybe also talk to a second or third pair. Is like I kind of compare it with going to a doctor. If you get a message which you don't like, what I always advise people is go to a secondary doctor. Maybe you like the message more. But this is more or less the same here. Is talking to different sets of people can give you completely different results. And maybe it's the point in time now to really renegotiate who you are going to work with, because especially when it comes down to VCF, if you really are feeling that as an enterprise you are in the market to actually move potentially up from vSphere only to VCF, then better be sure to have a partner who can deal with this. There is a great number of partner and experts out there in this whole community all around the globe who can actually deal with the complete stack. And those will be the ones who can actually explain to you on how to really get the value out of the VCF stack. Whereas if people are having a hard time in explaining you what vSAN is and how to utilize this, how to use NSX, how to use ARIA and everything else, maybe then in the long run, that is not the perfect partner for you if you think that you are really on the journey for the SDDC. And I think most companies are going to be on that journey sooner or later. And so that being said, I think is be open-minded. And also, as I always constantly say on my live streams and everything else, if you want to have a secondary opinion, especially on pricing, packaging, and everything else, always feel free to ping me or my team. In many cases, we are not necessarily going to give you a quote anyway, but we can at least give you a good idea on what you have there, if it makes any sense or not.
Yeah, and I got to say, the fact that you're in Palo Alto, that you're in the Bay Area, meeting with Intel, meeting with Broadcom, meeting with Hawk on occasion, that you are, doing something that, a mid-sized company isn't going to be able to do, right? This is a really good service, right? Because, I know I've worked with big companies in the past, right? And we've always had meetings, and I've been at briefing centers where there's always big customers coming through the briefing center, but that's expensive. And so the fact that you're here doing that, and then you can offer that as advice to customers, even if it's second opinions, is valuable, right? Because not everybody shows up and gets to meet with people in the Bay Area, especially Hawk and some of the people down in Intel. So appreciate you doing that and offering that up as something that that's available, right?
I think this is the only way on how can community work. Is it's about sharing wisdom and sharing the knowledge and sharing all the information we have as good as we can all the time. Because overall, there is enough out there to be done and to actually be made, and we can all only be successful if we are successful with this as together as a group. It's like this is not a one-man show or a one-man gig. This is to run this as a community like we have been doing in the past. The community rules have changed a bit, but I think overall there is still a great community. And I must also say, is like in comparison to many other vendors, I would say this is one of the communities where there's even a lot of good working together with other partners. And for example, we have always a very limited ComDivision and Friends dinner every year during Explore and other events. And some customers are surprised how many other vendors, and not only vendors, but also other partners are actually attending there. And because it is a community, and I can invite these other partners because I know they are not going to use this as a sales pitch, because we are all in this together and we all want to be successful together.
Yeah, I gotta say that's, when we're talking about the Broadcom transition, I would say that Hawk has been to the German VMUG. He went to Barcelona last year and met community leaders there. He is going to, I think, 2 different VMUG. They've announced this VMUG user cons. He's going to one in Texas, somewhere in Dallas, Austin, I think. You can look that up. I don't know which city it is. In Texas, and he's also going to be in Boston. So he's in it, and he's going to be speaking, meeting community members, shaking their hands, listening to people. He's a great listener. I mean, he sets strategy. He's a guy that knows how to set strategy, understands the data center like that. But he also gets out in the community. He understands community, he understands people that are implementing it. And he understands the hard work that goes into doing implementation. So if you look at our community team, there were some threads out there. They're going, oh, the V community is done, like a rip the V community. And it's like, yeah, no, none of the V community people got let go. We've funded it. We've actually funded it more from the marketing groups than we did in previous years. I know some of the divisions and BUs disappeared. Obviously, the EUC division is now over in Omnissa, so I can't quote. I have to say, last week I said that VMware has increased sponsorship. Well, the divisions that we run certainly have. And so if you look at community investment, we've done a good job. All the people are still here. We're still running vExperts. We're still running the hackathon. We're still running everything, and we're still doing interviews. And I think slowly, I feel like we've gone through the low, and we're getting momentum again as people see that, look, business is real. It's out here, and we're still all here doing exactly what we've done. And I got to say one last thing that you mentioned. I forget the phrase you mentioned where it was just proving to customers that the value is there, right? When you talk about VCF and looking at the whole, and that takes me back to like 2010. There was the same narrative, right? When we bought NSX and we were talking about, more than just vSphere. It was always like, and when Hyper-V was coming in and offering it for free, we've always had to prove that the value was there, right? That you had to look at the bigger picture, because VMware was never zero. You had open source hypervisors that were out there. We've always been I wouldn't call expensive, but we cost money, and that we've always had to convince customers to look at the operating costs, right? Look at the total cost. And I hear you say this, like, yeah, this is the same narrative we've always done. And that's what VMware's been good at, is building products that if you look at the total cost, it's there. I don't see anything really changing here. I see the same kind of story.
Perfect closing remark, I think.
Yeah, there you go. That's my 2 cents. Yves, I want to say Stanford, but it's Sandfort. Yves Sandfort, thanks for being here. CEO of ComDivision, going to be running the poker tournament on Monday night in Vegas. Thanks for being on the show and spending your lunchtime with us.
Thank you, Eric.
And we're done. We'll